Okay, good afternoon. Can everyone hear me all right? Okay, good. I'm Louise Pasterfield from Sponge UK, and thank you everyone for coming to this talk. It's about learning in a multi-device world. Does one size fit all? Now, the idea really for this talk is to talk about organizations who are just going down the road of introducing multi-device e-learning, or it could be that you're already delivering some of it and you're having some challenges, so you can explore it a bit further. But I hope there'll be some practical things that you can take away from the talk. Okay. It's very noisy, isn't it? Gosh. Okay. Having trouble hearing myself. Okay. Maybe we should start a little bit of a competition and I can shout louder. I want to just tell you a little bit about Sponge and who we are. Our stand actually is right there behind you in number 19. But just to say what we do, we're custom e-learning specialists. So what we do is we work with large organizations and we take their training and turn it into absorbing e-learning programs. So we do things like writing, scripting, content development, design, and build of modules. That's essentially what we do. And we work with a wide cross-section of clients from the public and the private sector. And this talk really is based very much on experiences that we've had with organizations and those going down the road of multi-device e-learning. So why are we doing this talk today? I think, well, really, there really are some very big and significant changes going on in the e-learning world. And I think significantly, we're seeing a huge growth in tablets and smartphones. And probably in the instance of e-learning, tablets is particularly relevant. And these are now being adopted by organizations, or they're considering how they're going to adopt them. And this is really having a huge impact on the way that we design, build, and deliver e-learning. Okay. And one of the key things for us being a company called Sponge, and we make things absorbing, is how can we make our e-learning absorbing across different devices? So that's really what we're going to be exploring. Okay, so what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about, well, what do we mean by multi-devices? What are we talking about? How and when we use these devices? The 4 key challenges for e-learning across multi-devices. I want to introduce to you the MDLA, which is the multi-device learning approach, which we use when we're actually creating solutions. And also then just to cover some examples in practice to show you some solutions that we've come up with and what we've done. Can I just say that on your seats, while I remember, there's some evaluation forms, and if you're interested in having these slides or some summary notes after the talk, if you fill that in and hand it back to us, we will make sure you get a copy of this. Okay, so to begin with, what do we mean by multi-devices? Well, by multi-devices, we mean smartphones, tablets, laptops, and desktops. And traditionally, laptops and desktop PCs is where most of our e-learning has been. But the growing markets obviously are smartphones and tablets. Now, I'm sure you're all familiar with some of the hybrid devices as well, like some smartphones are starting to look like tablets. There's some tablets that are coming out that look like laptops and tablets, but essentially those are the 4 main categories that we're going to be referring to today. But more and more devices are coming out every day. So this isn't going to change, it's only going to grow. Okay. So one just question for you now is, how many devices do you have? And I'd like just a show of hands. How many have 3 or more devices? It's almost all of you. And it just goes to show, that we're all using different devices. Okay. So I think really what we're seeing is a march of smartphones and tablets, and I just wanted to show you this graph here. It's quite an interesting graph. The dark blue shows how many portable PCs have been, in effect, shipped or sold. The light blue is desktop PCs. The red are smartphones, and the pink are tablets. So if you have a look in 2010, you can see that, they were roughly the same. PCs and desktop, portable PCs, roughly the same. And certainly smartphones were the main contenders there. But if you look into 2013, you can see the huge leap in smartphones. You can see the growth of tablets. And I actually think that light pink is actually quite significant. You can just sort of see that curve going up, that really tablets are only going to increase. I mean, we knew that we had smartphones, but it's the tablet market that we're seeing a great growth. And that's quite significant. What they're predicting is quite significant in terms of tablets and smartphones. Okay, so how do we use devices differently? And what I want to really cover now is Google did a very good research report on how we use our devices. This came out in August 2012. Some of you might be familiar with it. Now, it was primarily based on sort of consumers, so people purchasing, shopping, entertainment. We're going to be talking about learning, but still it's very relevant, I think, to us, and there's some good points. So I'm going to cover some of those right now. First of all, how we choose which device we use. What the research showed is the amount of time we have or need. So this is very much, a device was chosen based on the context. So it could be on time, it could be on the goal we want to accomplish, on our location, so where we're situated, and in this instance, it's our attitude and state of mind. So those are the main things that they discovered through this. But I guess from an e-learning point of view and an organizational point of view, often devices are determined by the organization rather than the learner. So we don't always let the learner just choose what device they're going to use. Sometimes we do, but for a lot of organizations, they're choosing the device. But the points are still relevant. You know, how much time do they have? What goal do we want them to accomplish? Where are they located? It's still very relevant. Okay. The next one is really how much time we spend on multi-devices. And this is actually a really interesting little graph. It shows that typically on a smartphone, people will spend 17 minutes, on a tablet 30 minutes, on a PC or laptop 39 minutes, and in this they've included televisions as a device 43 minutes. So they also showed it later in research that PCs are the starting port for many complex activities. But for us, I think what this is showing, what this trend is showing, is that the smaller the device, the less time we spend on it. So I think that's a significant learning point for e-learning. So what does this mean for e-learning then? So as I said, small screen equals less time, less complexity. Large screen equals more time, more complexity. So if you're on a smartphone, what that means is the learning content may be shallower. It may be more just in time. It might be reactive. You might do it in a panic, looking at your phone. Whereas a desktop desktop or laptop PC, it's going to be deeper learning, just in case, proactive, or maybe you need to prepare. So just a question for you now, if you just think about any e-learning you're thinking of doing, how complex is your e-learning content? Because it might start to give you an indication on what devices you should be using. There are 4 key challenges, I would say, for e-learning across multiple devices, and I'd like to just cover those now. The first is going to be on screen size and resolution. The second is on different operating systems and browsers. The third is on bandwidth and working offline. And the fourth is on tracking and the LMS. Okay, so to begin, screen size and resolution. This is actually a really kind of considerable issue, because one of the things we have is that when you start to take e-learning that maybe was for a PC and put it onto a phone, the text size may be too small, or even on some tablets it might be too small. Buttons and other interface elements, menu elements may be difficult to use. Any complex technical illustrations, complex graphs sometimes don't reduce very well. And sometimes interactions don't work. Like say you've got hotspots or drags and drops. To put those into like a small device can sometimes just take away from it and not work. So that's challenge number 1. So it might work well on a big screen, but doesn't work so well on a little screen. So the multitude of screen sizes can make the one-size-fits-all approach a little bit difficult. The second really is screen size and resolution. Now, someone spent a bit of time illustrating all the different screen sizes you can get. They're quite variable. There's quite a lot of them. Some authoring tools, if you're familiar with them, like Lectora, Articulate Storyline, they can rescale, but sometimes when you take things big or you take things very small, the quality can suffer. So there's actually issues with screen size and resolution as well. So scaling an e-learning program can be an impossible task sometimes if there's just too much detail. Okay. But then we'll move on to the next one. There's a different operating systems. Now in 2007, as you probably all know, Apple decided that they didn't want to use Flash on any of their devices, and that really was a bit of a game changer. So if you're using an iPhone, if you're using an iPad, it doesn't use Flash. Some other providers have also followed suit, so you can't use Flash on their smartphones. So what we're seeing is that the way we were creating e-learning, and Flash was used primarily for interactive e-learning, a very enjoyable interactive e-learning, it can't now be used on some of these devices. We're having to move now towards HTML5, CSS3, JavaScript. So we're seeing a shift in how we actually produce the e-learning, and that's another important consideration. Okay. So we're going to be needing to use a new technology mix. Bandwidth and offline. If you're within an organization's intranet, probably you can access your e-learning fairly easily if you're on a PC, a laptop. But if, say, you're out and about and you need to access it through the internet, you can have variable connections to the internet, even if you're going through 2G, 3G, 4G. Sometimes you might be able to find a hotspot, sometimes you can't. So there may be a variable connection. So it may be that you need to introduce an offline element to some of the learning that you're doing. Connecting to the LMS is also can be an issue. So if you actually are, within an office environment, you may be able to connect to your LMS. But again, if you're on the internet, you're outside of the LMS, there could be a firewall issue. You may not be able to connect to the LMS. Some LMSs do not support mobile devices, and some of the the big enterprise players are still kind of moving along to make sure that you can actually capture details on mobile devices. So that's another point. Okay. So here's the picture so far that we've painted. Scaling content doesn't work too well. You can't use Flash. You're going to need a new technology mix. May need an offline version for mobile devices. May not be able to use your current LMS. Okay. But we do know that organizations are expecting to use these devices as part of their e-learning. So the question really is, how do we meet these challenges and what can we do? Because there are workarounds. There's always ways you can work around things. Okay, so the way we work is we say, let's take a different perspective. So far, we've talked about technology, we've talked about tools. Let's look at it a different way. Let's look at it from how you approach things from a learning point of view. So what I'm proposing is to use the multi-device learning approach, which is what we use, which is a strategy, it's a methodology that we use to analyze your requirements and then to develop a solution and get over some of these challenges. So we're going to shift our focus of attention from devices and authoring tools to our learners and to ensure an effective e-learning. So I'm going to talk you through the MDLA. There's 4 steps to it. It's quite straightforward. And to begin with, step 1 is you're going to do an analysis of your learners. And you're going to examine who your learners are exactly. So, for example, you may have 95% of your learners based in-house, say they're admin, and you may have 5% that are your sales staff. So what solutions do you need? Could you have different solutions for them? Really dig deep into your learners and who they are. How much time do they have to learn? Do you remember when I talked about, complex and non-complex? If they're very short on time, maybe smartphones may be better for them. If it's complex information, you're a pharmaceutical industry, you need people to spend time, then probably, you may be looking at more of a PC type solution. Where will they learn? Where are they located? So that's something that's going to be quite critical to how you deliver. And do they have any learning characteristics? So, for example, are they highly skilled or are they low skilled? Is English their first language? That may also determine how you approach it. The second step is do an analysis of your content. So, how complex is your content, as we covered? How easily can it be broken down into short bite sizes? Do all staff need to learn the same thing? It could be that you deliver some of the learning on one device and another on another, depending on what you need. And does your content rely on, say, video or illustrations or graphics? Because that may determine how you're going to deliver it and on what device. Okay. The third step is, and this is getting back to the technology, what devices do you need to deploy? What devices are you going to need for your e-learning? And I do think it's important to be very specific here. We've worked with clients who really have nailed down exactly what devices they want it on, and I'll show you an example in a minute. Does your LMS support devices? You just need to know. It's a basic. We're finding that a lot of them don't. What operating system does your organization use? Some large organizations are still on IE6. If you're on IE6, you won't be able to use HTML5 because it doesn't support it. So you'll need to use Flash. So these are why we're asking these questions. Do you have bandwidth restrictions? Are you going to need to deliver an offline version? Okay, so these are really defining your technical parameters. Now, once you've compiled all that information and you've got your findings, you can then sort of analyze them and look at how you can meet your learning goals, your needs, your technical parameters, and most importantly, how you're going to overcome these challenges that we've talked about. But that's just a good sort of framework to use if you're looking at rolling out multi-devices. Okay. So, the other thing I just want to mention is when you're doing this, you may find that you may not be able to do everything at once. You may find, well, we'll roll it out to smartphone, but not something else. Maybe we'll do that later. And be prepared for that because, you can't, sometimes it can be quite a challenge doing it all at once. Okay, so what I want to do now is I just want to show you some examples of really how the MDLA works in practice, some projects that we've worked on that have used multi-devices. Okay, and to begin with, this one here is Sport England, and it's a PC and iPad-friendly e-learning solution. This was for an induction. They had a lot of remote workers around the UK. When they did an analysis of the devices they were using, it was mostly PC and iPad. So what we did is, and they had good bandwidth, so we didn't have to worry about bandwidth. So in this solution, what we did was we included a lot of video, a lot of visual elements, and we developed it an articulate storyline. So it didn't have any flash because it was on iPad. They also had LMS restrictions because of mobile devices. So it's sitting on we've got a Launch and Learn LMS, which supports mobile devices. So this is just an example of doing a PC and iPad-friendly combination that will work on both. Okay. The next one is a mobile-friendly media example. This is for Norfolk County Council, and this is for care workers. So they had a lot of staff and mobile workers on their own devices. They were out looking after patients. It was all about lifting and handling. English wasn't their first language for a lot of them, so we went for a very visual approach. And we did it all as video. So they were all little video clips, and these video clips would also be available on their smartphone. So if they're going in to move an elderly patient in their home, and before they need to go in and they need to know how to lift and move and handle them, they can go onto their mobile phone, they can watch the video, and they can get it quickly. Likewise, if they're a staff member and they want to do it like maybe a few days before, they can do it on their PC. But it offered that flexibility. This was a good example of just-in-time critical learning, and this is developed in HTML5. The final example I want to show you is of complementary devices, and this is where we developed an e-learning program as well as a mobile solution. So this is actually for a UN organization, and this UN organization this module was about communicating about women's health issues and how you go about doing that. They had staff around the world. They had poor bandwidth issues. There were LMS restrictions. I mean, this one really had all they were still using IE6. This one had all the restrictions that I was telling you about. And these are the workarounds that we came up with. We developed an e-learning module using Flash for those that are in-house based, that are staff based, then they can access the LMS. But for those that were traveling around and those that were maybe media facing, we did different content for them in the mobile application, and that's responsive HTML5, so it can work on any mobile phone. They chose these four that we were to deliver on. So this is using both Flash and HTML5 technologies. So it just gives you an example of really the different ways that we're working around and the solutions that we're coming up with. I think to finish, I just wanted to talk to you about a little bit of work that we're doing. We're creating a new tool called Reshape, really to address the issue of resizing and rescaling. We've received government funding from Creative England to develop our Reshape toolkit. And what that's going to enable us to do is reshape content to any screen so it's readable. You'll also be able to reshape interactions, so it'll change drag and drops to other interactions, say for smartphone devices. It will also reshape content. So if, say, you want to deploy different content on different devices, you can do it. And really, one version will be able to be deployed to many devices, and there'll be an offline functionality as well. So this is due to be released in January for Learning Technologies 2014, if you want to look out for it. But it's going to be quite exciting, really, delivering this one. Okay, so in summary, what do we want to say? So developing e-learning for multi-devices can be challenging because of the screen size, delivering operating systems, bandwidth, connecting to the LMS. But these challenges can be overcome. There can be workarounds and the ways that we can do it. We recommend creating an MDLA to gain clarity in your requirements and learning solutions that work particularly for your organization. Because we are finding there aren't like pat solutions. You've got to get it to work for your organization. and really to focus on the learning, not just the technology. And finally, just watch out for Reshape. It's going to be out in January 2014. So if you want to talk to us about our HTML5 solution, that'd be great. Okay. So finally, in answer to the question, learning in a multi-device world, does one size fit all? Which was the name of the topic. We probably would say no, but having an effective multi-device learning approach can include all. And I think that really is the key message. So really, if you want to talk to us more, or if you want to talk to us about any of the things you're experiencing, or want to share anything with us, please come and see us on Stand 19. If you'd like a copy of the presentation emailed to you, if you can fill in your evaluation form, that would be great. And happy to chat to anybody who wants to talk about it afterwards. Thank you very much.